another installment. I couldn't call it a rant, although I might rant. So continuing on, picking up where I believe I left off, I do review my recordings because sometimes I get into this flow, and then sometimes I trip over my words, or what I say is incorrect and I have to correct errors. So continuing on with the gifts of the Ahim reality to us 13,000 years ago, essentially three different gifts. There's fire of some sort. It was described as Prometheus. Prometheus also, there's a description of offerings in the story. Now this is like the Cliff Notes of the Cliff Notes. I cheated and read some other people's analyses of Prometheus, the Prometheus trilogy, if you will. And in the scriptures, we see where Avraham makes a burnt offering to the Lord. And I'll have to ask Daniel which of the L's it was. And it says a deep darkness fell upon him. Now, well, before that, though, he divided the parts. Now, it's not clear to me how many altars he had there, but he obviously had more than one. I presume there were two. There may have been more than two, because we do have records in the scriptures of 7 altars. Balaam did that, but 7 bullocks, 7 altars, 7 rams. There are 7 earth realities that can be called upon with that type of altar. I think there's seven different realities apparently that will respond to a burnt offering. And so he was like, well, I'm going to try everybody, and then maybe one of them will respond. In fact, 3 different L's responded. Taking this segue, Balaam, when he was called by Balak to curse the children of Israel, called upon different L's, or rather, he called upon everybody apparently, but each time a different L responded. Each of the times there was a different L. And I remember the third L to respond was El Elyon, if I remember correctly. I've got it written down. Perhaps I'll remember. So, so-called the Lord. No, it's which one? Which one? You've got 4 L's to choose from, not including the 3 Morai, the tenders of the string, the I am, the breath, the word, and the breath, and then the word. And there's those 3 as well. And I have personally seen all 4 of the L's at the same time. I've seen the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and Olam all at the same time. Now, there's another individual in the scriptures. This is the one that Moshe called upon. He was having problems with the L's. It's like you go to a place of business and you're talking with one of the employees. In this case, an L, one of the L's, and you're having difficulty with the L, and you say, well, with the employee. And so you say, well, can I talk to the manager? And that's the way, there's an authority structure. And that's the one that says you cannot look upon me, because if you were to look upon me, you would die. It's different than the L's. And this is the one that said, I'll, tuck you in behind this rock, and I'm going to pass by before you. You can't see my face, but you can look upon my hinder parts, my backside. This is one of the 3. That was probably, good question. I'll have to talk to Daniel. At least we talked about this before, but there's more than just the 4 L's to call upon. There's also the council of the L's. There's the archangels too. Before I take another segue, I got to finish with this segue. So there's different the Lords in the scriptures. There's more than just one. And there's different ones that will come and talk. And Balaam had 3 different individuals, different L's, show up and talk to him when he was calling upon the name of Yahweh. or whoever he was calling upon. He's probably calling upon anybody and everybody that would respond. He was smart enough to know about all the different L's. Anyway, so getting back to the story of Prometheus the Firebringer, Prometheus bound, and Prometheus unbound, 3 distinctly different things were brought. And one was fire. And it was taken from the power reality. This was an unauthorized gift of power, apparently, from the Olympus Asgard reality. It was disguised in I don't know if it was flax or bamboo. It was some sort of, and now that's what's described as. It's enclosed in something of earth. We're looking at patterns here. So Prometheus brings a gift of fire, but he also brought 2 other gifts. So there's 3 cognizably separate things. I was talking about the gift from the eagle seraph of governance that was taken from the Shaddai reality by Prometheus and given to us. And then under the Olam reality was the Hephaestus, Vulcan Hephaestus technologies that were taken from that. These are seraphs. These are, again, the power reality and given to us. And then there was fire also. 3 cognizably separate, unless it was packaged together as one gift and I've got it wrong and there's only 2. Anyway, so I'll have to continue to distill down, because I've talked with Daniel about this specifically. Just what was it? What were we given exactly that we weren't supposed to have? Now, part of the approaching the L's that I'm starting on here, the different L's. I talked, and another error correction, the difference between Azuka and 02. 02 is this red bodysuit character, has blonde hair with small horns, little red horns. I'm thinking of also the other Olam realities like Ibuki, the cosplay Ibuki, very large, but they're typically black and white swirls. I'm thinking, there's some Arca power maybe there. And it's interesting because Ibuki has this particular color scheme of red. I think it's red if it's not pink or orange, but red and green. And I don't think there's any accident that color reality exists, because that's essentially all 4 of those colors, the black, the white, the red, and the green. You're talking about the 4 horses of the apocalypse. For that instance, I don't think there's any accident that Ibuki has those colors. But potentially overall as being a character of the Olam reality. Azuka is a red bodysuit character with red hair. I try to keep my identification of individuals, and has an extremely large bident. I mean, we're talking like 10 feet long. And there's a magazine called Pitchfork, publication of the music industry, but what was on my mind was a tuning fork. Again, it's all this bident, this dual forked reality that is associated with Olam, with music, tuning forks, the music industry called Pitchfork, just all that dual plural reality of the Olam reality, and the importance of music and a tuning fork, a resonant. If you've ever had the opportunity to strike a tuning fork, and it's very much a bident. And then as I've been examining and watching media and looking for any being that exhibits either a monodent, unident, a bident, or a trident, and then zoop, here's Azuka with this huge red bident, gigantic thing, bigger than she is, this huge red bident. I said, finally the Olam reality being spoken of, shown some extent. Also, then the nature of the altars. Now, I had described before these various tools, if you will. Can't necessarily describe them as swords, although they are commonly referred to swords, and it's not a comprehensive list. We've got other swords. Daniel told me about the sword of the spirit. So El Elyon potentially's got a sword too. There's tools and swords in all of the realities. Anyway, so there's that listing of that sword, the sword of the spirit. But then the altars. There's all four of the realities have altars. The Al Shaddai reality, that altar is a stacked stone altar that's not allowed to be built under a tree. It has to be built out in the open. And the offerings most commonly associated with that are thank offerings, drink offerings, heave offerings, wave offerings. That altar was attended by the Aaronites, not the Levites. The Levites are Olam priests. They attend to the Olam altar in the outer court. Two different altars, two different priesthoods. In the inner court, we have a stacked stone altar. You're not allowed to raise up a tool upon it. Thank offerings, heave offerings, drink offerings, wave offerings, peace offerings, all these different, quite often based on grain and wine, maybe some blood. But the Olam offerings now contrasted. The Olam reality is a cut stone altar in the outer court or under a grove of trees. Olam altars are quite often hidden. That's why you see them sharply distinguished from Shaddai altars, because Shaddai altars are not allowed to be built under tree. There's the very specific statute of the Shaddai altar saying, nope, you're not allowed to build it under a tree, because the people were so used to building altars under trees. And these were the Olam altars that they were used to building, which are cut stone altars with horns on the corners. This type of altar is attended to by the Levites, which are Olam priests, not Shaddai priests. These are Olam priests. This is the common altar in the outer court for the common people. Anybody and everybody. And the offerings of Olam, of course, are blood offerings. Almost all exclusively, if not 100%, are all blood offerings of the Olam priests. Now, the Al Elyon altar is the hearth. It's the altar where, if you could call it an altar, it's a cook stove. It's where you cook your food. And El Elyon, this is the one that says 3 times a year the males shall all appear before me. And you of course, like any of these offerings, you eat with the El. You're sharing a meal with one of the Els, one or more of the Els. You're eating with one of the gods or more of the gods. So El Elyon is the one it's the hearth. And it's the cook stove. It's made of earth sometimes, or it's a brick kiln, an altar of earth, if you will. Pizza oven. If you've ever seen those great big domed pizza ovens, it's a type of El Elyon altar, if you will. I'm not saying it's exclusive, that's what it is. No, I'm just saying that's one that follows the pattern. So the El Elyon, now those are those three realities, those are terrestrial altars. There's one more altar, which is the Ehim altar, which is celestial. It's found in the book of Hebrews. And of course, it describes as you Elohim, so-called Jesus. Jesus as the kingly priest on the order of Melchizedek, however you like to pronounce that. Says he abideth a priest continually and hath somewhat to offer. So there's this fourth altar that you see in the book of Hebrews. You see it again in the book of Revelation. There's this altar in the temple. There may be more than one altar up there for all I know. So there are these 4 altars. Now going back to this, connecting all these dots, this random patchwork of stories and information I'm giving you. The dividing of the parts. When Abraham made this offering, it says this deep darkness fell upon him. What do you know? The Arca reality shows up. Hello, blackness. No surprise. And he had divided the parts. I don't know which type of altar it was that he had built. It was probably a Shaddai altar, my guess. And he had divided the parts. And we see this with the story of Prometheus, where parts of an offering are divided into essentially a dual plural. And you'll have the fat and the bones in one part of an offering, the parts are placed within another group. It's all the one and the same animal, but it's essentially divided into four portions, at least in the story, where Prometheus allegedly, now again, we're looking for patterns here, so don't say, oh, it was a deception, it was a lie. No, it was inequity. I'm going to divide this thing, you get to choose. That if anybody has taken the little legalese segue of the Armand Kondo letter written by George Mercier, that then became the tour de force work, George Mercier's Invisible Contracts, for those of you that need some education in so-called secular law, if you will, equity relationships with earthly kings. But he had described how he had two sons, and so in dealing or managing issues in equity, where portions have to be divided, and how is this done equitably? He said, well, I have two sons. I would have one son divide, in this case, a pie, and then the other son got to choose which part he wanted. Both sons participate in the equity exercise. So that's a way to manage equitable matters, is that George Mercier said, I have a pie, I give it to my two sons. One son is directed to cut the pie, to divide this pie. The other son is directed to make his choice of which part of that divided pie he wants. And both sons participate in the equity process, and neither can complain that they have been overreached or any type of inequity has taken place. Well, now getting back to this issue of the offering, the portion is divided up into four categories: the bones, the fat, the meat, and the organs. And what Prometheus did was, Prometheus took the bones and wrapped them up in the very rich fat. And then Prometheus took the meat and put it inside of the stomach, I think that was how the story went. And it's interesting to this very day that meat, commonly processed meat, is done in what are called natural casings, which are part of the digestive system, the intestines. So could it be that the practice that exists to this very day from thousands of years ago was based on the offerings to the gods? So Prometheus then devises this system of equity in which the meat is placed inside the stomach, the digestive organs. Meanwhile, the so-called inedible bones are placed inside the extremely rich fat. And then Zeus, the Shaddai reality, is asked, which portion do you want? And Zeus chose the fat. And so that precedent, allegedly, now I say this as allegedly, we have this as a story. It is continued down into the statutes of offerings in the scriptures. And I'm just describing ways to approach. If you're approaching one of the L's, and then also potentially just give it all, what have you. I don't know to what extent some of these offerings, the individual making the offering may not partake of some or have any of the offering, whatever, and all the offering is brought to the L and burned. And one of my educators, Carol Leonard Page, who helped in a work to restore Yua's great name pretty much to the entire earth, I would say, because his works, he consulted with individuals in South Africa. He spent tens of thousands of dollars in long distance phone bills and study and research and buying books and hard to find materials and restoring Yua's great name to the people. Although he knew the first part, it was just beginning to be revealed to him the olam reality. He just knew it was revealed to him the name. All he knew was the name and an aspect of time was all he was able to tell me. And then it was essentially, he went on to his eternal reward, and then I picked up where he left off and have continued his work. His mantle fell to me to continue this great work. So the offerings to the various elves, the Shaddai reality also receives flesh offerings, if you will. Certainly the Olam reality does. The El Elyon altar would probably also receive flesh offerings, except that you're eating. But the story I wanted to tell was I was making a grain offering, and as per the scriptures, there are directions of how to prepare a grain offering, and it takes the form of an unleavened cake. And so I was making my grain offering one day, and I had completed it, but I had done it inside on a kitchen cook stove. And I came to get my grain offering, and it had a bite out of it. And I came to Carol, and I said, Carol, I said, I'm making a grain offering. He goes, well, I thought you were making a cookie. It looked good to me, so I took a bite out of it. And of course he chuckled and laughed because it gave us all it just reinforced the reality to us of sharing meals with the elves, that if it's good enough for you to eat, it's good enough for him to eat. It's good enough for the elves. He and or she, because 2 of the elves are male, 2 of the elves are female. And so I ended up making a whole nother one. I didn't want to, but it really drove home. And plus, he and I, based on his work that he had already passed down to me, was a differing translation of the scriptures other than the King James. This is the 1902 Rotherham translation of the scriptures, which is a good study version. I like it in addition to the King James. And in there, in several places, is these words, my food, where the various elves are speaking of why aren't you giving me my food? And these are the offerings where individuals are to come to the elves with an offering. And they eat by the altar flames. And instead of, and of course, really, they eat the same way we do. You say, what? You just put it on a fire and burn it all up. Well, is the mechanism in our bodies of eating food really any different when you look at it from a chemical perspective? In our bodies, it's burned up also. So the overall chemical reaction, really, of combustion is, eating of food. That's why our bodies are warm. There's combustion going on inside our bodies, just at a much slower rate. So when we see altars in the scriptures, it's referred to as my food, where the meals are had with an El. The El has a preference of how that food is to be prepared, certain preferred foods, how it's to be prepared, possibly certain times. Also certain seasoning. For instance, Leviticus chapter 2 has a guide, partial guide, things that one or more of the elves like. They like salt and olive oil and frankincense. If you're going to do a grain offering, it's one of the easiest offerings to do. To do a grain offering, you take organic wheat, you grind it up in your grain grinder, you mix a little water with it, you turn it into a paste, form it into an unleavened cake. There are a few, as I remember correctly, most offerings are not allowed to be leavened. I think in a very maybe rare instance, but I could be wrong, there might be a few leavened offerings, but again, that's another one of the directions that offerings are not to be leavened. They are all unleavened typically. Unleavened offerings, they are not to be missing frankincense, oil, or salt. So for those of you that, of course, the dum-dums in churchianity will say, oh, well, That's all been done away with. All right, keep being a dum-dum in churchianity. And Daniel, he was talking with some dum-dums. We call them Uggs. And the Uggs are just like, oh, just trust in Jesus. Just trust in Jesus. And Daniel was like, Yahusha, so-called Jesus, is the restoration of the way to the Father. Okay, now that all right, so you are restored to the Father. Now what? And the Uggs are like, no, just trust in Jesus. Just trust. No, you don't get it. You dum-dums. You're restored to the Father. Now the Father's got work for you to do, a certain way to live, instructions to perform, and it's not just this sit back and go, oh, just love. And Daniel and I covered the different types of love, which I had already known, but he really gave me a really good, and I'm going to discuss it with him to make sure I've got this straight. They're all like, oh, this sloppy agape. Churchianity's like, oh, just this selfless, this selfless love. Now they don't understand what selfless is. They don't understand what selfless is, and it's where the Father only loves those that are like Him. It's completely selfless in a way that He's just looking for those that are only. Believe it or not, it's the one that's going to lead to the purge of billions, because it's not like, oh, I just love everybody. No, that is not what agape love is. That's not what it is. So I'm going to talk with Daniel about that more, and also the reason why I'm making more recordings is because the gods came to me and complained. Yeah, they complained. You're not making enough recordings, enough sandwiches. They were like, you're making sandwiches, but you're not making enough sandwiches. Okay, so that was exactly how they told me. You're not making enough sandwiches. And so these YouTube recordings, in the other media, the other outlets, BitChute, Brighteon. What's the other one? BitChute, Brighteon, Rumble, and I may expand into other platforms. And I tried to upload to BitChute, and my BitChute account has stopped working. Partially, I've got to write support because I had an email that I've had for about 17 years just die on me. And I had a lot of accounts that were based on it, and it died very quickly with very little notice. It just had to do with just going away. It turned into pay mail, which I didn't want to pay for. And I've got a lot of accounts that were based on that email, and the email is now dead. And accounts that were based on it, including my BitChute account, now won't allow me to log in. The account is still there. The videos are still there, but I can't log in to upload more videos. So I got to write them and say, hello, hi, my email died. It doesn't exist anymore. Can you substitute another email? So because I presume in time, I saw up on poll on Politically Incorrect on 4chan, saw an article about 2 days ago. YouTube, because YouTube is a part of those that exist in death in the military-industrial complex, the cabal, they've been just using YouTube to push their agenda. It is not profitable. YouTube is a huge money loser, always has been pretty much. And they use monetization to direct the behavior of what they want on their platform. And there's, again, I just have this as hearsay, but they're looking to delete all content prior to 2012, or maybe even later, and channels that don't have activity, and or of course my type of channel. I don't know how long I can continue. I have had 2 videos about the eugenicists get deleted. They don't like me talking about eugenics and the eugenicists. So I'll continue to upload to YouTube as long as I can, but do take note, and I again should put links in my descriptions, and I've been too lazy to do that. I can always update them. But I'm on 3 other video platforms. And also, you should be downloading these videos. There's no guarantee that even the internet will be continuing. You should have and acquire all of you should be offline. You should be able to function offline. And the scrying mirrors, if you'll remember the recording I'd made where I believe it was Shaddai, it said, "You chickens," the chickens, they're pecking. That's all they know how to do is to peck. Their scrying mirror. And Shaddai is not happy with chickens, mindless bird brains. Shaddai wants people that think and work. And I saw something up on poll just before coming here today that said Islam promises 72 virgins. Virgin what? Males? Females? Boys? And then this other religion promises 2,800 slaves. And of course, then there was this, well, what does Christianity have to offer? And I'm like, a servant's garment? Yeah, a garment. What do the L's, what do the creators of all that are seen and unseen have to offer? A garment. A garment. A work garment. And of course, the billions are out here like, no, man, I want to be an overlord. I want to be served. You got it backwards and upside down. No, you get a servant's garment. Are you ready to go to work and shovel manure? That's what the L's are offering. A servant's garment. And maybe a pitchfork. Are you ready to shovel manure? Work. Not this like, oh, we're going to sit on clouds with our harps. Not going to happen. In fact, I was also thinking about this most recent response to my request. I wanted to see the very end, kind of like the epilogue, the denouement of after all the destruction has come upon the earth, and the Dyson sphere and the shuttlecraft are visible now. And that blue ring I saw, I said, Dale, that was probably propulsion. That was actually jets. It uses jet propulsion, and it was actually firing its rockets to bring it down to the earth. Now, I don't know if I just saw this blueness all the way around, this blue. And I don't know if that was it using a rocket technology or what, but it had this bright blue ring around the top. 25, if you were to divide a planetoid around large body into the upper and lower hemisphere, and then 25% from the middle to the upper 45%, there was this curved blue, bright blue. And I was meditating on that. And I said, what was that? And I got thinking about it. I said, it was probably a rocket. It was rocket. It was its, quote unquote, retro rockets bringing the shuttlecraft down to go come park on the North Pole. Now, whether that's exactly what it was, I couldn't say. But certainly what it looked like to me. So that's that. What's the next? There's another topic I wanted to talk about. It's on the tip of my tongue. Pause here. Or do I? 34? I've got 4 minutes left here. What was it? I apologize. Oh, it was on the tip of my tongue. I'm so sorry. Oh well, I'll pause for now. This recording will go up.